Hello, welcome to the Opinionistics. We're your hosts, John Maloney and Risk11. And also, Eric Taylor will join us eventually.
Wooly?
So, sorry, what?
Wooly? Unless you text in chat.
Well, if he doesn't join, just go with the flow, like
Yeah.
we always do.
Yeah.
Introducing from Ohio, Gary Ross.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
Anytime.
Yep.
So, what do you do, Jerry?
Well, I am I'm a horror author. So I make my living trying to scare the pants off people.
Okay.
Okay.
And what kind of horror books do you write?
Currently, I'm releasing today, actually, a book of short stories, 9 in all, that deal with strange ways that people have to deal with fear. One of the stories is about a young mother who's has a strange obsession with a scarecrow that's in her yard, and another one is a young boy discovers an old Ouija board, and during it he talks to his grandfather and he warns him of murders. So really, it's a book kind of I was born and raised in the 80s and 90s, so I watched a lot of shows like Tales from the Crypt and Night Gallery, and I like the idea of short little stories that have twist endings and can frighten you.
Okay.
Okay.
Very nice. And how long have you been doing this for, Jerry?
I've been a writer since before I can even remember. I remember one of my first memories of actually thinking about stories. I was in grade school and I would go back and forth on a school bus. It was a long ride every day, and I would try to entertain all of the people around me in the school bus just by the trailers I'd watch, not even watching a movie, and I'd make up my own stories. And every day they would ask me, they would come to me and say, "Please tell me another story." So that was where I kind of got my feet wet in terms of writing and wanting to tell stories is the excitement that people around me they had when I would tell a story.
I love it.
Yep.
Any questions, Risk?
So like I'm presuming most of your books that you've written, I'm presuming they're on Amazon or so how did you get into I'm not sure we answered this already, but
How did I
first published one of your books?
Sure, yeah. I was like everyone else. I started writing at a young age, and life is what happens when you're busy doing other things. So I started a family and started another career as a technical writer through a pharmacy. But soon, I decided, what? I have a drawer full of books, and I want to see what would happen. So the very first few months that I put my book out to all the publishers, I got an answer back, and that was for my debut novel, Bottom Feeders, which is about the story involves a young guy who becomes a prison warden at a very young age, probably one of the youngest. And while he gets this new position, inside the drawer of his desk, he finds a diary that says the former prison warden had held the devil in the basement of the prison. So he has to spend the rest of the time figuring out, is this person really the devil?
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I actually want to know more about this book you're about to release.
Sure.
What is the plot line of it?
Well, it's actual 9 stories, short stories. And the theme I'm trying to go for is, parents, children, and put in everyday situations, but put in harm's way. A lot of the characters, they have to try to overcome something that's tragic or frightening in order to survive. So that was kind of the impetus of the book. And I really wanted to take something. This is a collection that I've started since I was in college. The first first class I took in college is one of those stories is actually in the book. So it's a span of 20 years of stories that I've written, and it kind of has an old school feel to it, a nostalgic feel, and in a way, it's kind of a throwback of how stories were written. And I love that. I love this. I read a lot of Stephen King short stories, and I wanted to kind of make my own mark the same way.
Okay, that's good. So if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh goodness. Um, I don't know. My family, I guess when you trace them back, I'm Nordic, so one of the cooler areas I'd love to live. I'm also, I'm a disc golfer. I don't know if you've heard of the sport, so I do that with in my spare time. And for a while there, I was riding for the disc golf pro tour, so I'd love a place that that enjoys that sport but you can't argue with good weather. So, always, if you could afford it, California would be an amazing place to have a good climate and good weather.
Absolutely. Where do you see yourself 20 years from now?
Oh man, that's a great question. Thank you. Well, hopefully, my goal is to really just be able to put out a book a year and just see my career move forward and find a readership that just really clings on to what I'm writing and can't wait for it to come out. I I I love seeing good reviews about people who like my work or are touched by it or even scared by it. I think we take for granted all the things that we're good at, and I've always been told that I'm a decent writer. So if I could, you know, carve out a living for the rest of my life writing books, I would definitely do that.
Okay, excellent. Now, if you had your own talk show, who would you bring on as your first guest?
Oh, great question. And funny enough, when I was a kid, before I even decided I wanted to be a writer, I always wanted to be a talk show host. I always had the tape deck, and I would pretend I was Johnny Carson and do all the different have different my friends come on as guests. I think right now, if I had anybody I could talk to and maybe pick their brains, it'd probably be Stephen King. He was an idol of mine and a great writer that kind of he changed the landscape of writing and let you know people like me. Horror didn't seem such a scary proposition to be able to put it out in the world.
Fabulous. Have you ever saved a person or animal's life?
Wow. These are great questions. I there was a lot of people that it's funny that this generation, I don't think that they use a lot of stick shift in cars. It's kind of one of those things that people just take for granted now. And I've taught a few of my friends how to drive stick shift, and learning to drive a stick when you've hardly driven a car before is kind of scary. And there are a couple times where if I didn't have good reflexes, we would have ended up onto oncoming traffic during my lessons of teaching. So a couple of times I think I might have spared a life just from a traffic accident.
Ah, yes, that makes sense. Do you ever travel often?
I, you know, coming from America, we just don't, traveling isn't like the hugest thing. I personally would love to go to, Italy or Germany or Spain or, any countries out there. But most of my life I've spent traveling along the states and finding we have like almost every different climate that you could think of during a given season. So sometimes it's hard to get out of the states, especially after the pandemic. But next a couple years, I plan to really, go to Europe and try to see some of the old architecture. I love traveling, and I need to do more of it.
Yeah, me too. But it only takes time for me to do that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Banana friche. Have you ever heard of it?
No, tell me about it.
Well, basically, it's like a smoothie, but also frappuccini kind of drink, and it's very delicious.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where can we get that? I need one now.
Actually, I made it up.
Oh,
Oh yeah, but it'd be pretty cool though.
yeah, it would be.
Oh yeah. What was the strangest dream you've ever had?
Strangest dream. Let's see. I think, you know, I seem to have the same recurring dreams. I don't know if, most of my thing was struggling through high school and just wanting to get out. So to this day, at least once a month, I dream about not finishing, my midterms or not turning in a project, and I wake up in a cold sweat. It's one of the silliest things ever. But really, a lot of the ideas that I have for my books come from my dreams. So if I wake up in the middle of the night with a spark of an idea, something scary or something that's unusual, I try to jot it down if I can or remember it. Usually I'll wake up and it's more of something, I could never even remember. But every once in a while, I have a kernel of an idea that kind of changes things, and I'm able to write a book about it.
Fabulous. What's your favorite season?
Well, I used to be it used to be summer, and I don't know if you know much about Ohio. The Midwest in general. We have all the seasons, but our two strongest ones are winter and summer. So our moderate weather really is it's fall or spring. So I'm starting to really enjoy fall for its leaves falling. It's nice crisp air. It's like the most beautiful thing you can see around where I live, and it makes you really understand the power of nature when you can see the seasons change and the leaves change colors.
Alrighty then. What are your opinions on board games ruining friendships?
I imagine you're talking about Monopoly personally. If that I think that's ruined most families
Yeah, that's
across
the
the world.
one.
The greed of capitalism has strikes again. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love board games. I come from a family where we played board games and card games all the time, and it's it took me a lot of years not to get competitive with it. You don't want to do that to your kids, beat them at every game, but I grew up loving games like that, Monopoly, and even a checkers or chess to this day I still love. Do you have a favorite?
Mm, no, I don't have a favorite. There are a few that I say I enjoy playing. That's for sure.
Right. My son's taken to Catan, if you've heard of that.
Catan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. My family plays it all the time.
Yep. So we're big on Catan right now.
What was the longest trip you have ever taken?
The longest trip. I'm from the northern part of the United States, and I was taking a family cousin. We were taking her down to visit her husband who lives in Florida. He was in the Navy at the time. So we drove from the top of the United States all the way down to Florida. And then we had to move her to California. So we drove across the country from Florida to California. It took probably about 5 days of being in a car, driving down Route 66, seeing all the sideshows and shops along the way. And it was an amazing experience to see some of the things that will probably be gone, in my lifetime, that kind of stood for what, you as a traveler in the United States, you would see.
Absolutely. Which superpower do you wish you could have?
The the number one answer I'm sure that anybody answers would be to fly. Everybody wants to fly like Superman or be invisible. Those seem to be the most enticing of all the superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, if I had a superpower, it would be, it would help me with my struggles. It'd probably be that I'd be able to go to sleep and wake up and a complete book would be finished on the coffee table next to me. That would be an incredible superpower. That would be the most useful.
Yeah. Absolutely. What is the best way to start the morning?
Well, for me, I think it'd be a nice cup of coffee. Um, I it's funny, it's when I was younger, I hated getting up in the morning. I couldn't do it. I'm sure like most teenagers and people into their young lives, they just did not want to get up and, face the day. So they'd rather stay up late. But the older I get, the easier it is to get up and the happier I am to see, some morning sunlight and a hot cup of coffee.
Hmm. Okay. I like it. I love it indeed. Yes. Very intriguing. What kind of music do you listen to?
I think that's the most eclectic of all the things that I like. I love classic rock, of course, but I like some of the I'm a big Beatles fan, and um, actually when I was growing up, John Lennon was probably one of my favorites. I just loved how he created songs and how he wrote them. As I got older, the Seattle scene became big during my teenage years, so I loved Chris Cornell and Soundgarden, Nirvana. Those were, you know, those kind of Pearl Jam. They changed how I thought and how my brain worked at that age. It was kind of vital to my teenage years to to experience that kind of music, that kind of rebelliousness.
Okay. Very good. And on the contrary,
Hmm.
hold on.
Sure.
Crike. Crike. If you could travel back in time, which decade would you want to live in?
Wow. I guess there's always something good about every decade. Um, I grew up in the 80s and I enjoy, the sensibility of the 80s. It was definitely a little bit more controlled, but I think, you know, if I had to pick a decade, it'd be the 60s. There was so much change and upheaval. Ideas were shifting more than any other time that I could think of. And, really a lot of music was being born during that time. So you were kind of awakening as a human being during the 60s.
Yeah, I agree. It was quite the change of the century.
Yeah.
Would you rather be really hot or really cold?
Well, my father used to work outside for a living. He braved the climates to do work, which is, I'll give him a lot of credit for that. It's hard to do to go out into the elements and work on anything. And he always told me, he said, it's always better to be cold outside than it is to be hot because you can always put on more layers, but you can only take off so many before it's too late. So I'll take cold.
All right then. What is the most ridiculous fact that you know?
Most ridiculous fact. Now you threw me for a loop. Let me think. I think you might have stumped me. I think I can't think of one right now.
That's all right. Happens to a lot of people. How did you spend your last birthday?
My last birthday, I guess, the sentimental in me would say spend it around my family, but you know, I guess it falls in line with the same thing. If you were like a condemned man, what would your last meal be? Um, it would probably be probably a nice ale and a nice big steak and maybe, or, a pizza. I seem to not be able to live without pizza. So probably a good meal, spending time with my family before it all goes away.
Nice, nice. Hmm. Oh yes. What is
Mhm.
the one thing you can't live without?
Wow, that's a good question. The thing that I could not live without would probably be books. Uh, as the years go by, the quality of movies goes in and out. TV shows, some are good, some are bad. Some that you can't, you don't enjoy so much. But the one escape I've always found is books. I mean, there's like 100,000 of them made every year, so there's never an end to entertainment. So um, it's kind of made me who I am. It's kind of made my children who they are. And if I didn't have books, then I'd be a sadder person.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you have any pets?
I do. I have a. He's going to be 2 years old. I have a border collie by the name of Snickers. So he's a black and white dog, and you know, those dogs are known for herding sheep or cattle, and he spends most of the time trying to herd us as a family around the house. And he's an expert at sports, so we can throw anything at him, and he's going to catch it.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty nice. What makes you what always makes you laugh?
Uh, I think the thing that makes me laugh the most, um, I don't know. I think it's between a couple actors. I think Will Ferrell always seems to make me laugh for some reason, or maybe Jack Black. I think the absurdity that they find and create in the world, it always hits the right spot for me.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Would you rather sleep on the ceiling or sleep on the wall?
Well, I've seen enough vampire movies to know that you can sleep standing up. So, um, I guess if you were drooling, it'd be better on a ceiling. So I'll go with that answer.
All right, fabulous answer. If you have to choose between scuba diving, bungee jumping, or skydiving, which one would you choose?
I've done bungee jumping, so I haven't done skydiving yet, but I always want to do skydiving. And I guess if you that was your last, if you knew that you weren't going to live anymore, that might be the best way to go is by skydiving. A quick end to it all.
Hmm. All right then. What what's your next big plan for the next few weeks?
Well, my book released today, so the next couple weeks I'm going to be doing a lot of the circuit, a lot of podcasts, a lot of shows, great ones like yourself, and I'm going to be kind of showing everybody myself in the book, and hopefully meet a lot more people before in-person book events begin. So I'm going to be busy, but happy to be busy.
Oh yes, it's good to be busy, 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 busy. Has has there been any interesting people you've met in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know the best people that I meet are, they're not celebrities so much, or they're not, famous people, but they're there are a lot of people that would come to my shows or come to my events, and they have a passion for reading, and they love to know about my books and when I'm going to have my new books out, and they want to know all the little details it takes to be a writer. And those kind of people are mine, just because they're excited and passionate about the word. So those are the people I try to surround myself with.
Fabulous. And that is all we have for this episode. It's great having you here, Jerry, talking about your new book, your origins, your
Yeah.
inspirations, and everything else. It's been amazing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. And, my book is available on Amazon right now, or Bridget's Gate Press, and I hope that you'll give Throwing Shadows: A Dark Collection a chance.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay opinionated.